back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Owl's Nest Week 2 of Self-Quarantine. Hope everybody out there is staying safe, washing your hands, avoiding all the unnecessary contact that there is out there. Jake, how's the self-isolation treating you? For sure. Well, it's only gonna, from this point on, I'm in Michigan myself, and we just got locked down statewide for 3 weeks, and it could go on for even more, so the best we can do is make the best of it. So on today's show, we're actually going to be exciting show here. I'm really excited for this one. We're going to be talking first about the newest hero that was just released on the PTR, Echo, coming out as a DPS hero, and I think at least of the people that I've talked to, a lot of people were expecting maybe a support hero. We're also going to be talking about the Chinese teams and Seoul finally getting a chance to take the stage this week. 16 matches. It is going to be a weekend of epic proportions. All matches, of course, being played online. So why don't we go ahead and start out with Echo then. Jake, I have to know, first impressions, what were you expecting, and what do you think of what we've seen and what you've got to try out so far?
Yeah, sure. So as far as what I was expecting, I was with everyone else thinking this hero would probably be a support. But I'm really glad she's a DPS, selfishly, because that means I get to play her a lot. And I think she's a hero that really suits me, so I'm really happy to see her. And I think she's a really exciting hero for Overwatch.
So what is it about her that really excites you, or you think that is going to make her, sort of stand out in the sea of other DPS heroes that we have? Because a lot of people are saying, we need more tanks, we need more support. There's already enough DPS in the game. I mean,
the obvious answer is that she's is the ult, right, that sets her apart, and the ult is this really game-changing, really different ability, which is super exciting, and I think for the game really interesting. It adds this whole new layer of counterplay. But at the same time, I think what's more exciting to me about the character is just her base kit is so unique and different from the other DPS heroes. There's heroes like, I don't know, a hero like, let's say a hero like Ashe that comes out and it's like, yeah, it's a new hero, it's got some new elements to its kit, but at the end of the day, it's still a hit scan hero that mostly stands on the ground and shoots hit scan. And we've already got a few of those, so it's not all that different. But Echo is really unique to play and really has a different feel than all the other heroes, even before you engage the ultimate, which really changes up the way the game is played, right? As choosing which hero on the enemy team that you want to become and how you want to use their abilities. I think it's going to make the game really fun and really fresh, especially just because this ult really changes the game entirely. You have to think about, do we even want to pick that hero, or else Echo might copy that hero, and then that adds a whole level of gameplay. I think it's a little strong right now. It seemed that way. That was my first impression. But I haven't played so much since they patched the super jump. So without the super jump ability, that bug getting fixed, now the flight's still powerful, but it's not going to let you escape for free from any situation or across the entire map. So overall, I'm pretty excited to play this hero in ranked and in higher rated games, because it's been really fun on the PTR.
Now, I don't think that we've ever had a DPS hero that when it first came out was widely accepted or played within sort of like the meta. I mean, obviously Sombra became very strong, but even when she first came out, I think she was mostly overlooked. Do you think that Echo's going to be one that as soon as she hits the live servers, people are going to start finding ways to integrate her into composition? And what do you think those compositions might look like?
I think she'll probably be played pretty quick if she doesn't get touched with the way she is now. I think her raw damage output as a hero is really exceptional. I will say though, Doomfist was played a lot when he came out, but he was also completely broken and was rapidly patched to be like when the original punch hitbox was absolutely massive. It was very hard to miss with the punch. Like, you could not dodge it. It was just too big. Even if the person didn't realize you were dodging, they would probably still hit the punch. So that's the only other hero like that actually has been, as you said, coming out on DPS that's actually played a lot, when it comes out. And that hero had to be nerfed. So I hope Echo doesn't have the same fate in store. She seems really powerful, especially with the beam. I think the sticky bombs are incredible burst, but it's very, very difficult skill shot. If you want to actually one-shot a 200 HP character, you need to land them all, which is really, really quite difficult. So, I mean, unless someone's standing still, it's not really going to happen all that much.
Yeah, see, I was actually wondering because to my knowledge, besides obviously Widowmaker hitting a headshot, the old hog hook was the only other sort of, real quick one-shot sort of, combo that I could think of being in the game. Do you think that the sticky bombs may end up being nerfed, or do you think that skill shot is high enough that a lot of people aren't going to be able to hit
I think the skill shot is so high that, like, outside GM, no one's hitting it ever, and inside GM, people are hitting it less than 5% of the time they use the skill. So it's like, I think it's way too hard to use to be that strong as far as like one-shot kills go. The other factor is I believe if you get healed after the bombs stick onto you, then you'll live with like 1 HP. So the 200 combo is like all 6 bombs and the connection damage from the bombs. It gets you to 200. So even if, as long as your team is like spam healing you and you're in a safe spot, then the Echo won't be able to finish you off. So I really don't think that this ability is broken. I think if there's anything that's broken on this hero, it's got to be the focusing beam. That
was going to be my next question.
I actually think that's I don't like people's suggestion that they nerf the ult, because I think the ult is really crazy and fun, and all the suggestions like, oh, if you die in the ult, then you just die. I don't know. I think that really sucks. And it's like, okay, well, you can't go in. Like if you get like Genji or something, you can't really steal the fun characters anymore, like Genji, and go in because you don't care about dying and you can just use the blade. Well, you can't do that anymore because now you might actually lose your Echo. So Echo you'd basically be perma picking up tanks on the copy, and you wouldn't really do anything else if you actually had to risk your life to copy. But I think the beam it's such an interesting ability, right? Because the conditional is not easy. Like getting somebody to half HP is not like free necessarily. But the power, once you do have them there, is extraordinary. You just like almost nothing in the game can stand up against 200 DPS and then a tracking beam.
Well, yeah, I mean, you look at a Genji or a Tracer, if they're at half health, they're dead in 1 second if you get that beam on them, basically.
Yeah, I found if you sneak up on people, you can just press the beam and like they won't even react in time if they're less than half HP. Just because I guess that's PTR, so it's not like the highest rated players, but even once you play against high-rated players, I think the burst potential of this is really extraordinary to like kill tanks that think they're safely have a good amount of HP. You can just burn through pretty much anything in the game. So I think this beam ability will be the real key to the hero, especially if she's mercy pocketed. It really is extraordinary amount of damage. So if there's anything that gets nerfed, I think it probably should be that. Nerf the upgraded DPS to like 150 or something from 200. I think the hero would be fine. Maybe a little less potent. But
so
I don't
overall,
think
then
let's see. Let's let it play. Let me abuse some ranked games for a while. Don't nerf it right away. Trying to get some free SR.
All right, so that's basically going to be my last question then. A lot of people right now I think are crying either they love her or they hate her, and those that hate her say she's too OP. So do you think in her current form right now that we have enough information to really know if she's overpowered or not?
I would say I think she is overpowered relative to the other DPS. I think if she might be like 100% pick rate type of hero, just for the raw, like usually heroes with that much mobility cannot break shield faster than McCree, and this hero breaks shield faster than McCree. So it's like, wait, why not play her? Like she's insanely mobile, and she has one of the fastest shield breaks in the game. So even if like one useful exercise in Overwatch, I think, is to always compare what happens if 2 heroes stand behind a Reinhardt and just hold M1, like who wins and nobody moves. Or not M1, but necessarily, but using all their kit to deal max shield DPS. And Echo wins, not even close. Echo dominates. So when the hero has that much, you have the mobility to chase kills, and you have this insane shield spamming potential. I think those two things combined might make this hero very, very dominant. But hey, it's fun. As a totally non-biased projectile DPS player, I'll say that this hero does not need any nerfs.
All right, well, it's probably going to be a few more weeks before she hits live and a few more before she goes into competitive. But we're looking forward to it, and as always, we'd love to know what you guys think. So make sure that you connect with us over on the YouTube comments, Twitter comments. Find us at CheckpointXP on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. You can find Jake at JakeOW on Twitter, and myself at Robbie_LandisCP. Coming up, we're going to talk about what we can expect from some of the Chinese teams now that they're finally going to get a chance to show what they have this season on stage.
I fight until it hurts.
Welcome back, everyone, and thanks for joining us. We appreciate you watching. If you happen to be catching us on YouTube, or if you're catching the premiere on the Outlaws Twitch channel, thank you so much for watching. And you can also listen and download this in podcast form. You can find that over at CheckpointXP.com and get us just about wherever you get your podcasts, including Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. So for the first time since the start of the season, we're in, week 6 or 7 now, and we still haven't got to see the Hunters, Dragons, Charge Spark, or the Soul Dynasty officially play yet. This weekend, 16 matches, an epic broadcast coming at us, and finally, we get to see the Chinese teams and the Soul Dynasty take the stage. So we're going to talk about what we can expect coming out of them. And I want to start with the Chengdu Hunters. They finished 12th place, or at least 12th seed last year in 2019. And Jake, looking at this sort of new... the way that the meta sort of works now with the hero pools and how things can kind of be fluid and fluctuate from week to week, the Hunters were a team that didn't really stick to what the meta was a whole lot, right? And they've made some small changes in their personnel. What is it that you're expecting from the Hunters once they get on stage?
Well, I think that's the big question this season is, will they... I mean, I think Goats was a bit of a unique circumstance in terms of the meta. Like, I hear a comp that was very, very different than any other comp, and that absolutely slaughtered everything. So it was this weird situation, whereas, you know, like, do you play this comp that is dominating everybody, or do you try to make an alternate strategy successful? And they did a great... They're, you know, the most consistent team with, like, those alternate strategies. But the other thing about this team that I remember from playing against them is we could never beat them playing Goats against their dive comp. Like, they were way better in that matchup. But when we just got mad and started mirror matching them and just said, like, all right, fuck this, they're too good against Goats, they understand the matchup too well, we're just going to mirror match dive, then we usually beat them, like, pretty consistently. Even though we didn't really practice that comp, they didn't practice the mirror match either. So it wasn't, to me, it didn't seem like they had, like, insane dominance in terms of skill on those heroes. So personally, I think this is going to be a rough season for them. I don't expect so much out of them. Maybe they'll prove me wrong. But personally, I think they had a lot of success last season out of really understanding the matchups that they played and being really, really difficult to practice against because they played a different comp. But I think that became an advantage for them over time as they, you know, committed very, very hard to it. And this season, the question is, will they be able to do the same thing? Will they be able to create a similar advantage by playing a strange comp? I think with 2-2-2, it'll be a lot harder to do that. I think a key element of playing a fundamentally different strategy than your opponents and, like, beating them by having a totally different game plan than them that they don't really understand, like for playing dive into Goats, you know, you just have a totally different game plan than Goats, and you have to just execute that. But in 2-2-2, I think any game plan has to be at least a little bit more similar to each other than they did before Roll Lock came in. So I think it'll be a little harder to be like a team that just goes totally out of left field. And the other thing I think about this team that makes me a little worried is you've got hero pools, right? So if they have some weird off the wall strategy that is different than other teams, they might lose some heroes from it and be forced to adapt week to week, just like everybody else is. And I don't think they're the most flexible team. That's the thing. Like they had their weird comp they could play, but they weren't that good at like traditional goats until very, very late in the season. They didn't really play it or practice it.
So where do you think within the team that their weaknesses in playing some of these different roles lies? I mean, Jinmu specifically, I feel like has a very deep hero pool, but Ameng played a lot of the Wrecking Ball through last season, and near the end of the season, he did show that he had at least some chops, playing the Reinhardt, but where do you see the biggest weakness of their roster?
Well, I mean, I think beyond Jinmu, I think a lot of the players in the team, beyond Jinmu, I would say Elsa, both have like fine hero pools that like can play whatever they need to play. Beyond that, I guess there's the question of like the new DPS they've just picked up, or new players they just picked up. Like, can they change some of that? I think Yang Xiaolong and GQren were both players that had pretty limited pools. So maybe they have a little bit more flexibility this season that enables them to maybe stay with the meta. We could see changes. I mean, and that's the reason. It's a good point, though. I do agree. Like Jinmu is really skilled and has a broad hero pool, but it seems like in the modern Overwatch League meta, you need like literally every single player on your team to be that way, not one or two of those players. So they have those bright spots. I agree, but I don't know if it'll be enough to compete with, especially the other Chinese teams, which I think are really, really strong this year.
Well, next one on the list here, we have the Shanghai Dragons. Now, they finished 11th seed in 2019 last year. They had a very, very good run through Stage 3, winning the Stage 3 finals, but the roll-lock and meta that came after that seemed to send them back to the bottom. They've actually lost quite a few. They released Youngjin, Gamsu, Koma, and Envy, but they picked up Fleta, Li Zhegan, Stand 1, Void, LIP, and Fearless. What do you expect out of the Dragons? Are we going to see, sort of the return like the Stage 3 Dragons, where they sort of start to surprise everyone and make a name for themselves? Stay where they are, or could they backslide?
I think this is a totally new Dragons, and I think they're going to come out absolutely swinging this season. I think this team's going to be really, really, really good. I think picking up Void and picking up Fleta, those are like the two biggest pickups in my eyes in the offseason. I think this team could be one of the best in the league. I think they'll definitely be the best Chinese team this season. But that's just looking at roster, right? Like, there are those X factors of the roll lock and hero pools and whatnot. But I think a player like Fleta can really shine under the conditions of hero pools. He was always having great success on, a broad variety of heroes across hit scan, projectile, flankers, like really all categories in DPS. Fleta has had success, so I think he'll be a player to watch for sure on the Shanghai Dragons. I think Void was huge for the Gladiators when he was on that squad. So I think these are really, really good pickups, and I think they have a stable base as well to start off. So this is a team I expect to be the best Chinese team, just from roster. But obviously, it's all with a grain of salt, given that they haven't played yet. But that would be my...
looking at the roster myself, sure. I definitely agree on the stable base part, and I think unlike some teams that, have sort of that stable base who, so long as everyone's healthy and happy and good to go, you should be fine with. Looking at Shanghai's roster, they have a very deep sort of bench pool to be able to pull from as well. So I'd love to see the Dragons sort of return to sort of that Stage 3 sort of form. But you're right, brand new Dragons should put on a great show. The Guangzhou Charge here, they finished 9th, second best of the Chinese teams last year in 2019. They've released Hotba, KYB, and Rise, Fraggy Bishu as well, but I don't think that either of them actually got any stage time with the Charge. But they've also picked up Neptuna, Waya on support, and Krong on tank. What can we expect from Guangzhou here?
To be honest, I think the pickups are really interesting, especially picking up Neptuno to add another Western player to this squad. But Nero has had a ton of success on this team, so it seems like whatever system they have is working well in terms of integrating these players and making the overall roster succeed. You also have Shu, who I think is one of the... I think there's just a few players on this team that are actually super underrated that make me think this team will be, in my opinion, probably the second best Chinese team. And those players, I guess, to be specific, would be Happy, Shu, and Rio. I think all three of these players, in my mind, are like best in class for their role. Happy for like hitscan DPS, especially Widowmaker. One of the best in the league, like top, I don't know, 3 or top 5 on Widow, especially. I'd be comfortable saying top 3. I mean, this guy's Widow is absolutely freaky to play against. Shu as well on the flex support. Huge playmaker for his team. Comes up big on every flex support, so not an issue for him to play hero pools. Same for Rio in that regard, playing tank, but really playing all the roles on tank just perfectly. I think this team has, like, they're not as big of a roster. They don't have as many people as some other teams, but I don't think there's any reason they can't be one of the best in the league. I don't know much about Krong. That's like my X factor for them in terms of off tank, but I think if their off tank is performing, then they have everything else that they need for sure.
All right, so far then you said you put Shanghai at the top for the Chinese team, Hunters at the bottom, and Guangzhou probably the second, which means that you're putting Spark about at third, which surprises me. I mean, they finished 4th last year overall. They were only 4 wins behind Nixel, 5 behind the Shock, and they haven't changed a whole lot of their roster. They released Crystal, No Smite, and Revenge, picked up Mika, Coldest on support, and Otto on DPS. What is it about the Spark, after having, done so well last year, but in my opinion, kind of, were a little bit underrated? What is it about this year that doesn't inspire as much confidence as what Shanghai or the Charge do?
Well, I think I'm pretty confident that I think Shanghai will be really strong and that Hunters won't be as strong in terms of the Chinese teams, but I'm not at all confident on who's better over Spark and Charge. I think these teams are both really strong. I think they're a lot closer to Shanghai than Hunters are in terms of strength, in my mind at least. I think Bazzi and Gods B are really good. I guess Otto is going to be their projectile DPS player, who is fine on that role. You also have Sasin, who can flex to the DPS role. And IDK and Bebe, IDK especially always looks so good. And then Gusha and Ria, both good players. I mean, you're right. I'm just looking at the roster right now, and I think this team will be really strong. Like, I don't know. It's really hard for me it's hard to compare this team to Charge, I think, because I think their strengths lie in different places. But there's such a big question mark for these teams now with the hero pools. Like, we haven't seen them play with hero pools. We don't know what they're going to do in response. We don't know, are they going to do it with roster? Are they going to do it with keeping the same roster and adjusting on an individual player basis? We just don't know like how they're going to approach it. But you're right. I think there's no reason this team won't be also really strong. And, I don't know why I'm just so big on Charge this season. I just think this is going to be a big one for them. But Spark also looking really dangerous as well.
Yeah, no, it should definitely be a very exciting weekend. And finally, we touched on them or talked a little bit more about them last week, the Seoul Dynasty on last week's episode, but just really quick, wanted to run through them again. How do you think that the Seoul Dynasty is going to stack up against these 4 teams?
I think Seoul will definitely be able to hold their own. I don't think they're going to be, a pushover squad by any means. Of course, you add Prophet in, you better expect him to be delivering in a big way. Bidosin has always been a little bit hot and cold, but if you give him the right circumstance, he definitely has the skill. He definitely has the skill to succeed. Michelle, I think, is one of the best off tanks, and also one of the most underrated in terms of like in the past seasons and whatnot. I think he has really a high level of skill on every off tank, especially Diva, of course, the dominant off tank. The real question mark for Seoul is how these ex-London Spitfire players fit in, Bidosin, Prophet, and Gesture. You could easily argue that these are the best players from the original championship London Spitfire team, like the strongest individual players on that squad. So I think the question mark for me is basically how those pieces fit into Seoul Dynasty. But as long as there's no issues and they're just able to perform, the only roster question mark for me is who's stepping up to play alongside Prophet. Is it Fitz? Is it Illicit? For each meta, for each hero pool. I feel like Prophet has to be almost a permanent starter with how broad his hero pool is. but there's definitely a little bit of like there's no one on this roster. I mean, obviously Prophet is a good Widow player, so maybe he'll be the Widow player. He'll be the core hit scan. Maybe that's what they're looking to do. But all these players on the Seoul Dynasty roster are known pretty heavily, known for playing projectile or just flex DPS heroes. They're not specifically known for being like that main DPS hit scan player. But I know Prophet absolutely can do that, so I'm assuming he will be the one to go into that role. But there are some question marks for this team, like as far as how they're going to field their DPS.
Well, those are questions that hopefully will be answered this weekend. Again, 16 matches. It's going to be one epic week. Not going to be a whole lot of downtime if you are an Overwatch fan. We're going to talk about some of those matches coming up here in just a moment, including our must-see matches of the week.
I did the Octane cosplay. That was a thing. I'm probably going to leave that in the past. But if Psyonix wants to supply me with a high quality Octane cosplay, I'm not going to say no. Cardboard Octane. I just want that in the game. If Psyonix can get that Cardboard Octane in the game, that would just make my life.
Shake it.
Everybody for sticking with us, guys. If you haven't already, make sure that you are following us on social media. That's CheckpointXP on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also find Jake at JakeOW on Twitter, and make sure that you give him a follow and turn those notifications on over at twitch.tv/Jake_OW. So just as a reminder here, the hero bans going into this week are still going to be Winston, Soldier 76, Sombra, and Lucio, so we'll try to keep those in mind as we're talking about what these matchups could end up delivering for us. But first, we need to start with our matches of the week. So given that we have 16 matches, 8 each day to go through, we decided that just coming up with one match of the week isn't quite enough. There are going to be at least 2 that we want you guys to make sure that you watch so that you can, sort of be up to date on what it is that we're going to be talking about next week. And the first of those is going to be the Hangzhou Spark versus the Guangzhou Charge. Now, last segment here we talked about, both of those teams kind of in the middle. I think you're right, Jake. I think both of us are expecting Shanghai to hopefully be, the more dominant of the Chinese teams. But, Hangzhou coming in 4th seed last year shouldn't be any pushover, and Guangzhou basically has a completely rebranded roster. So when you throw these 2 teams in the mix, what are you expecting from them? Is this even one that, you can confidently call one way or the other?
I think given the hero bans this week, I believe that this will be the week of the Widowmaker. I think Widow is going to be, maybe we'll just see like the McCree and the Mei as expected, but I actually think somehow or another, Widowmaker is going to absolutely dominate this entire week. I think no Lucio, no Winston, and no Sombra take out 3 of the strongest counters to Widowmaker in the entire game. I think Hammond is a little out of favor right now. It's a little too hard to get value consistently on the hero in a 2-2-2 setup. So to be honest, I think this is going to be a real exciting matchup, but I think it's going to be like Happy versus Bazzi on the Widowmaker. But when you're talking Widowmaker duels, I'll take Happy over literally anybody else in the whole world. I think this guy is, I don't like to say anybody's the best in the world on a hero, but he is, in my mind, the best. I mean, I have to give it to him in terms of just pure consistency and potential on Widowmaker. I've never played against somebody as good as Happy, so I got to give it to him, got to give him the respect. So I think if it comes down to, if I'm correct and I'm in predicting the meta and there's a lot of Widow, then I think Happy's going to bring this home. But I think it's going to be a close one. I don't think Bazzy's any pushover on the Widow either. Also an insanely strong player, so Sparks will fly, to be sure.
Sparks will fly indeed. I actually think that I'm gonna go the other way, and it's not that I don't even necessarily disagree with your analysis, your prediction either. I think that the Spark having a deeper roster and having 5 other DPS to draw out of, I'm hoping that they come into this, and even if the Charge do end up having, a little bit of the lead, they take, the first map or first map or two. It's my hope that the Spark have more than a few tricks up their sleeves, and hopefully have an answer or two that they can potentially fall back on. The second match of the week that we're looking at here is the Guangzhou Charge, Guangzhou again, versus the Shanghai Dragons. Now, we both, talked about how we think that Shanghai may be the strongest of the Chinese teams here. So what are you expecting coming out of this match, especially, again, taking into consideration that you think that Widow may be very dominant in this meta?
Hero pools make this so interesting because on the one hand, I would generally say, looking at the rosters, I think Shanghai has the stronger roster. I actually think Happy would be the best Widow in the server, again, against Shanghai. So I think Fleta is a strong Widow player, but I think Happy is better. And if that's what it comes down to, then I think Guangzhou has a real chance to upset with how impactful Widow duels are. Like, if your Widow is winning a lot of the duels, like 75% or more of the duels, the game is almost impossible for the other team. Like, they almost can't play if there's not dive heroes in the meta, because taking out heroes like Sombra, Winston, and Lucio means you aren't getting to the Widow. If she's far away, you aren't going to get on top of her. She's going to have like 20 chances to shoot somebody, and a really good Widow player is going to hit like half of those. So you just, like, you have to Widow duel. I just don't see a way around it. And if one Widow is popping off, it can just have such a huge game impact. So this is a weird one because I would say Shanghai is stronger, but I almost expect Guangzhou to upset. But maybe I'm going too crazy on this prediction. Maybe I'm not. I just feel like Widow has to dominate the meta with these bans, but or has to be perma played. But we'll see. Maybe. And there's also the map question, right? Like, if you go to a map set that has some of those really close range engagements, then, some of these dive heroes might actually still be able to just run over Widow, or even just a McCree fighting her in mid-range behind a Rhine shield. Might just be too much. So, we'll see. I would still think Dragons are the stronger team, but I almost think GZ's going to upset.
All right, so are you leaning more towards Guangzhou for this matchup as well, then?
It's tough. Like, I gotta predict the Dragons because I said time and time again the Dragons are the stronger team, and I think they'll find a way out of this to get a win, even if Happy's going insane on the Widowmaker. I think they'll find their way out of it.
Yeah, I feel like I feel a bit safer also leaning towards the Dragons. You know the old saying, Fleta is meta. So looking at the rest of the matches to watch here, again, there are tons of them, but a few more of the ones, that we think you should pay particular attention to. The San Francisco Shock playing their first match coming in here. The Los Angeles Valiant, while still, an overall rookie squad, I think are definitely going to be looking at making a big splash here. How much of a chance do you think the Valiant have going up against the 2019 champions?
I'd give them 30%. 30% to win.
Ooh,
I think it's a
not
30-70
terrible
match, or maybe even closer, maybe 35-65. I think this match is a lot closer than people think. I don't think it will be a stomp. I have some faith in the LA Valiant boys. We'll see. I don't think they're gonna win. But I think they'll definitely take some maps, and I think it's possible for them to upset. But Shock needs to beef a little. Like, Shock beefed a little against Fuel. They weren't looking untouchable against the Fuel.
That's true. Yeah.
So I think against the Valiant, that's a stronger team than the Fuel. So Shock, it depends though, because usually Shock, I think it has the right responses. Like, if they aren't as dominant as they want to be, they're going to be back in the lab in a big way. So with this hero pool as well, let me think about what this does for these teams. No big deals for either team. I think both teams have flexible main support. It's not going to be an issue to not play Lucio. Yeah, I don't think the hero pool matters too much I don't think it really gives either team a big advantage this particular week in that matchup. So I think it could be closer than people expect, but I still think Shock will take it.
So then the other good one that I'm looking, well, first of all, they're all going to be great, but I think the other one that I'm looking forward to is the Paris Eternal versus the London Spitfire. London, another rookie squad, has been showing, some spirit this season, and the Paris Eternal, there's a few times I feel like, we wanted to put them in the conversation of being one of the better teams in the league right now, but when they lose big. So between these two, do you think this is a chance for Paris to, gain another win, or do you think this is a chance for the London Spitfire to once again sort of show that we may be new to the main stage, but we still have what it takes?
I think Paris is the better team here, but I'm very interested to see how FD God does off Lucio, right? He's been insane on the Lucio, if not the best in the league on the Lucio in the last few weeks, but he's gonna have to play something else this week, or they can sub him out. I guess I don't know who they have on the bench behind him, but I'd expect he'll probably play. Usually, main support is your main caller, so you don't really want to switch that role. It's not really such a good idea. I just think FD off Lucio is the only real issue for Paris, but I think they also looked like one of the best teams at this McCree May Ryan strategy before hero pools came into effect. So I think that if the meta goes back in a similar direction with a similar core of heroes, then Paris should still be stronger. So I think I'll give it to them. But it's gonna be a good
Yeah, I'd also say that Paris would be the safe choice, but I think that London, again, has the spirit and has the spunk to upset just about anybody at this point. So we'll see what ends up going down, guys. But that's gonna be all the time that we have for today. Once again, please make sure you connect with us on social media. We'd love to hear from you and know who you're rooting for this weekend. Thank you, Jake, for joining me once again. Remember, guys, to always stay on that payload.